Vladimir Lenin was a historical politician and political figure who, with his revolution of 1917, very well changed the course of history forever and created a legacy that still affects people today.
Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov was born on April 22, 1870 in Russia. He was raised as a middle child in a fairly wealthy family. When he was just a child, his older brother Alexander was arrested by the Russian government for illegal political activities. This was the first of many factors that would influence Vladimir Lenin to start a revolution in Russia.
Vladimir himself was expelled out of school for participating in a school protest. After graduating university, Vladimir grew quite fond of the work of Karl Marx and the concept of communism. The leader of Russia at the time was Tsar Nicholas II, who came to power after his father, Alexander III, died. Unfortunately, Alexander III died before he could teach his son how to rule Russia. This left Tsar Nicholas II all by himself to learn how to rule one of the largest nations in the world. Tsar Nicholas was an incompetent ruler. In 1905, people gathered in Petrograd as a means of strike to protest for economic reforms. Nicholas retaliated by using military force. This was known as Bloody Sunday. Vladimir Lenin's view on communism grew so much that he was actually arrested by the Russian government for crimes against the Tsar and political revolution. He would be sent to prison for 1 year and then exiled in Siberia for 3 years. During his term in Siberia, Vladimir adopted the alias Lenin. When his term was up, he went to go travel Europe. Lenin traveled all across Western Europe, eventually making his way to the United Kingdom, where he met up with a group of fellow Marxists, Leon Trotsky and Joseph Stalin. The three would come together and plan a revolution in Russia that would take place sometime later. It was around this time that a Serbian assassin killed the heir to the Austrian throne. This was the outbreak of World War I. Germany invaded France, and France called on their ally, Russia. Russia had joined World War I. Russia had had a major success recruiting soldiers for its army. Many workers from factories and farms left their jobs to go join the army and fight in World War I. In fact, so many people had joined the army that there were very little people left to work at factories and farms to produce money for the economy. So little was being produced that soldiers were very poorly equipped and were often told to pick up the guns of fallen soldiers. So many people had joined the army, there were about 15 million soldiers and very few factory workers and farmers producing money for the economy. This had destroyed Russia's economy. Barely any money was being produced. Vladimir Lenin saw this as his chance to start a revolution. Him and his comrades went back to Russia. Getting back to Russia, Lenin was influenced more than ever to start a revolution. People were being mistreated, and the economy was so bad, people needed a wheelbarrow of money for one loaf of bread. People started joining Lenin's Bolshevik Party, which would be the leading party in the Russian Revolution. The economy at the time was in such a way that the majority of the population were poor peasants working under very small handfuls of rich people called bourgeoisie, with the middle class being virtually non-existent. Lenin wanted to change this. He wanted the middle and working class to be the ruling class of Russia. The bourgeoisie were highly against this, as all of their riches would have been taken away. The Tsar himself was removed during the February Revolution of 1917. Lenin and his Bolshevik party stepped in during the October Revolution, which happened on November 7th and 8th of 1917. The Soviets had stormed the Winter Palace and taken over Russia. There were still people who were loyal to the Tsar and to the Russian Empire who despised Lenin and the Bolsheviks taking over all of Russia. This had sparked the Russian Civil War, which had lasted for 5 years. Eventually, the Red Army had overpowered the White Army and won the Civil War. On December 28, 1922, the Soviet Union was born. Shortly after the Soviet Union's establishment, Lenin had died in 1924. He had wanted Leon Trotsky to take power. He was instead exiled to Mexico by Joseph Stalin, where he would later be assassinated. Joseph Stalin had become the new leader of Russia, but he changed up most of Lenin's ideology. He changed most of what Lenin wanted to do for the people and for the country. Stalin was a ruthless ruler. He sent any bourgeoisie, criminals, or anyone who opposed him into labor camps called gulags. Anyone who wasn't sent to a gulag was killed by Stalin's secret police. Even so, Stalin had greatly industrialized Russia and turned the USSR into a world superpower. With a new government, Russia stopped helping out Germany in its economic crisis. This only helped Hitler rise to power and establish his regime in Germany. This would of course later lead to World War II. In 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa as an attempt to invade Russia, but failed. The Soviets had defeated the Nazis and marched on to Berlin. In 1945, the Soviets marched on to Berlin, Nazi Germany's capital, taken it over, defeated the Nazis, and effectively ended World War II. After winning the war, the Soviets occupied most of Eastern Europe. This would cause tensions to rise between the United States and the Soviet Union. This would be the birth of the Cold War. The Soviets occupied all of Eastern Germany and believed they should also have all of Berlin. They started setting up blockades to keep Americans and others out of there, so it would only be theirs. Eventually, the Soviets built the Berlin Wall to separate the East from the West. The wall would become a very iconic symbol in the Cold War. A Chinese revolutionary by the name of Mao Zedong saw the success of Lenin's revolution in Russia and decided to take the same kind of stand for China. This would cause a domino effect, with many countries following in communist revolutions. America began to fear this, as now it saw communism as a major opponent to capitalism. Because of Lenin's ideology, many Soviet citizens would receive free education in schools and universities. This, coupled with the competition of the Cold War, allowed the Soviet Union to make many technological advancements, such as space travel. The Soviet Union would be the first to launch men, women, animals, and more into space. A man by the name of Fidel Castro saw the success of communism in the Soviet Union and decided to take the same kind of stand for his country. The Soviet Union would help him out by sending over missile technology. This would be known as the Cuban Missile Crisis. This event would nearly spark nuclear war. In 1982, Mikhail Gorbachev was elected to lead the Soviet Union. He wanted to raise the Iron Curtain and make the Soviet Union a more free nation. He also wanted to ultimately turn the Soviet Union into a capitalist nation. In 1989, Gorbachev gave the order to tear down the Berlin Wall and raise the Iron Curtain. Gorbachev wanted to loosen the grip on the Soviet Union's 15 republics, but as a result they all broke off, leaving just Russia. This would mean the Soviet Union would dissolve in 1991. On December 25, 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. This ended the Cold War and stopped tensions throughout the world. Eastern Europe would become a commonwealth of independent states, with the most prominent one being the Russian Federation. Vladimir Lenin made a major change in Russia. Before Lenin, Russia was a peasant society, and would have remained that way without him. Without Lenin, Russia would have fallen apart, for a failing economy wouldn't have been able to sustain its people. Only through Lenin's revolution could have Russia industrialized as quickly and as efficiently as it did in such a short amount of time. Only through Lenin's revolution could have Russia transformed from a peasant society into a world superpower. Lenin changed the world with his revolution. Lenin's revolution set off a chain of reactions that changed history forever and still affects us today.